So, for context, I'm in my car, I'm chilling, and I'm driving to my girlfriend's place because we're gonna work out. But this is a good solid 54 minutes. So I'm just gonna utilize this time to discuss about a subject that I've been heavily invested in, and so yeah, we'll go from here. Okay. So if you guys don't know, whoever's watching, if you aren't like immediate friend or family or like even my acquaintances that don't know me like that, and unfortunately we can't always talk about our immediate interests, mainly because it requires like an environment of context to kind of establish, and then also for someone to have the energy to be invested in that kind of atmosphere. And sometimes it's hard to switch off of that if you're working or whatever, right? Or if you're at a job, or if you're at a place or that's more that makes you preoccupied with something that you have to immediately do or whatever, right? But for those of you that don't know, I said all of that to say I am a game developer, and it is my passion. I'm a game designer. The games that I create are more so experimental in nature, but they're not experimental for the sake of it being experimental. They're experimental because they kind of have to, but I'm not going to go into all of the context behind the finer nuances. I don't think in this video. I think this video is just talking about my experience with it. So for me, what I do, I watch game design philosophy videos. So kind of things like level design, or puzzles, or character interactions, to how players interact with the environment, to just how the experience is going to be played out, right? Or how people interface with the actual environment that takes place when they're playing the game, right? Because for those of you who are not versed in gaming, period, and I do have viewers who have absolutely zero clue about anything that goes on with gaming and stuff. It's not as simple as, oh, you pick up a gun and you start spraying down people. It's not as straightforward. And in fact, to base on an assumption of games based upon an FPS, a first-person shooter, is pretty telling of how much experience one actually has had with that form of media, straight up. So that's kind of tangential. However, so for me, what I explore is the more finer nuances of the subjects, but also how an experience is played out, you know what I mean? Like if I pursue a thing and okay, I'm being very, very abstract here, so I'll just give you an example. I'm trying to create a game that requires a group collaboration where the players create their own characters with, you know, contextual borders, obviously, guiding how the character creation system is set up. But the primary, like, experience that the players will go through is pretty much what kind of jobs they go through, right? Or what kind of occupations or professions or whatever, right? So I'm creating a system where it's not man versus man. It's not man versus, like, you know, creature. It's not man versus autonomous entity that's out to get them, but it's more like an experience of a man versus self, or a man versus situation, or a man versus, like, the environment, right? I don't know what they're tripping about, bro. I'm not gonna cap. But anyways, so as a result, I have to design my gameplay feedback loop in that kind of setup, right? And if you don't know what a gameplay feedback loop is, or a gameplay loop is, I would just, for the sake of brevity in this video, I would go to the search engine and look up what is a gameplay loop, and how do games go about it, or how does someone what would a gameplay loop look like in practice or something? I don't know. Like that's what I would look up on the search engine. But anyways, so you have this situation where I'm creating, like, a game where you have people who create a character. They have a preset, like, you know, professions that they've chosen, right, from the get-go. And then the whole premise is that you are a group of odd job workers, and you're collaborating to basically perform like projects, like, pretty much, right? Like quests, tasks, whatever it is. And I call this sort of gameplay sequence, like, project operations. So during these sequences, I have to basically develop in my mind, like, how these things are going to play out. And that's the philosophical, like, nature / like, I guess the game design, or the game designing aspect comes in, right? Is how do people experience the gameplay of this? So as a result, I, as a designer, have to start drafting up, like, what I'm gonna be doing, or how am I going to organize this, right? Like, you know, what are the lists of priorities that needs to be fleshed out so that this thing can be, you know, set up for a prototype, right? Because I'll be real, like, you know, I'm not on a time crunch per se. How it's more so like I'm doing this as a passion project / hobby. So it's not like my paycheck is, like, you know, so, like, desperately clinging to this to be like $1 million success, because surprise, surprise, I have a job that is not my, like, immediate creative passion. Which, fun fact, you know, for an artist out there, I just want to let artists know, like, you know, you can have and enjoy a job, find a job you like that's not your passion. And I know it's kind of wild to say that, especially in this day and age where people want to be so hyper like specialized in their field or whatever, and due to, you know, the Industrial Revolution, shout outs to Uncle Ted, you know, we've become this sort of hyper like specialized like creatures or whatever, like hyper specialized minds, when, you know, people from the Renaissance, like, or whatever, like, they had all kinds of jobs. They were inventors, they were gig workers, they were artists, you know, they were musicians, whatever. Like, they did all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I get it. It was out of survival, right? Like in a or whatever. But I think that actually the greatest strength that an artist can actually ascertain isn't just about the practice of their craft and to just constantly hone it daily, but also how they can ingeniously ascertain ideas from their other scopes of life that's absolutely irrelevant of what they're creatively passionate about, right? I think that, for example, I used to dedicate my time, not even dedicate, like I had to, out of necessity of capitalism. I had to work at a pizza place, and I was washing dishes. But actually, fun fact, just a little detail here. I had an opportunity where, you know, for most people, they'll look at it and they'll just be like, yeah, it's like stupid and I'm doing this, and they'll gripe and whine and complain about how they're not getting paid enough, which, to be fair, like, I mean, 15 smackaroonies for washing dishes ain't that bad, I'm not gonna lie, for me, you know. But it also depends upon, like, everybody's socioeconomic situations and blah 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 blah. Like, oh my goodness, that lady is a little too close to the road. I hope she's safe. Okay. But anyways, yeah, so for me, when I was washing the dishes, I was washing that thing, and, you know, I got my dope leather dishwashing gloves, and I was you know, putting myself to work, basically. You know, I was very detailed with it. I made sure, like, every glass was, like, squeaky clean. And eventually, obviously I was very slow at first, because speed isn't actually my greatest strength. In fact, actually, speed is, like, the worst and the weakest strength that I hold. And as a result, like, because of that, I had to figure out a workaround. And that's basically what I had to optimize, is figuring out workarounds. Not just like arbitrary shortcuts just to save time, but like actual sustainable, like, pathways that shave a lot of time, but also that maintain its quality, right? And I don't think that's, I mean, people would argue, oh yeah, that's like that's the shortcut, but I don't know, man. For me to have developed that, it wasn't a shortcut. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me to have figured all that stuff out, that was not shortcuts. That was like, I had to, that was just pure optimization, and like, and or like what, pure like creative optimizations while trying to, like, maintain the integrity of my work, right? So, for example, like, I would consider AI to be a shortcut. And in fact, actually, I believe that, I believe that shortcuts are kind of frowned upon. And in fact, I feel like it should be frowned upon. But yeah, I would consider AI to be a shortcut. Like, if you're gonna not hire an artist, then whatever, that's fine. Like, you can do that, but that's a shortcut, you know? And and you can give me all of the argumentations or whatever, but I think that it's very it's a contribution to a creative decline in society, and and you are contributing to that, straight up, hands down. I think that it is, and just putting that out there. But like,